What's going on, guys? Kara and Caleb, we got a double whammy today. This is the
Hey,
first lineup of speakers that I get a 2-for-1.
Ah,
great. We like
we
that.
like to be first.
Yeah.
Very special, very special. But for maybe the watcher who doesn't know who you all are, give us a quick little lowdown on who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Well, I'm Kara. This is Caleb, obviously.
I haven't switched. Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to switch names just for that. So I live in LA. I work in food and experiences. So I create meaningful gatherings around food. And together we have a podcast. I'll let you speak for yourself on what you do, but together we have a podcast. But our heartbeat really is just to create connection for people. Yeah.
Caleb, I'm a former West Point graduate, Army officer, NFL draft pick, and now I'm kind of a full-time public speaker where I just kind of travel the country and try to create inclusive spaces where people feel more seen, heard, and understood in life. And I think that's what we try to do with everything, especially with the podcast, Kara and Caleb. Very unique, I know. But the podcast is just creating that safe space. And what we do together with Connect Dinners, which we'll probably talk about more, is just creating a safe space so everyone can feel more seen, more heard, more respected, more understood, and create a connective experience, because when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it all, that's what we're wired for.
Do you think that the wiring is going through some rewiring right now? Connection is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more unique, right?
I think in a lot of ways, it's exposing a lot of our false connections, right? In a lot of ways, we're seeing where we have found value and identity and things that are outside of ourselves. And that really is the quest to life, is to go through life and to see where the things that I have placed a demand on, like whether it's a relationship, me placing a demand on Kara to be something for me that I can only be for myself. And that, in essence, that's codependency, right? And I think with this season, I know what it's done for me, and I think what it's doing for a lot of people is it's really showing the codependency that we have with other dynamics of our lives outside of just a physical relationship.
I think it also, yes, I definitely think it's going through a rewiring. I think the big piece of connection is people need to be able to connect with themselves. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a time that's so busy and so fast paced, and we pride ourselves on productivity and hustling and getting things done. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but the byproduct of that is that a lot of times we don't know how to simply be and just connect with who we actually are. And so I think to reiterate what Caleb said, this time is exposing a lot of what we place our identity in, what we place our connection in. And I think so many of us have rightly found value in the work that we do, or the relationships that we have, or the social status that we have. And it almost feels like the world has put a big pause button on all of that, not necessarily to take it away, but to let us look at it, and say, like, is this actually giving me identity and connection? Is this fueling me, or is this not serving me anymore? So I think it is, it's definitely going through a rewiring. And I think that's an incredible thing, terrifying for a lot of people, but incredible.
It's like the pause and the reset that no one asked for. It's the life deload that nobody wanted, and we're just kind of trying to just roll with the punches. You said a keyword there, Kara, pause. That you all actually have a unique pause on something right now. Right before all this, you got engaged, like right before this, and you were talking like wedding planning and getting all this stuff in motion. And I actually have a few friends who have had to reschedule not once, but now twice their weddings, maybe even push back a whole nother year. Someone maybe who's going through that. I mean, we all had big life plans. Some of us getting married is a big life event. Now that's all on pause. Like, how is that going for you guys?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I probably because I've had more emotion around it than he has. I think what it's important to recognize in this time of COVID is that everyone is losing things. Like, there's so much loss happening, loss of future plans and jobs that we had and things and even life. Like, there's actual loss of life. So there's just a ton of grieving that needs to happen. And I think for me, and again, this is just my story, but I was someone who was so excited to get married in life. Like, I was the girl who thought I'd get married younger. I'm 35, getting married. And
Because you found the perfect guy.
I found the perfect guy. Yes.
So, yeah,
Worth the wait. Worth the wait.
Yeah.
But because of that, I've had expectations of what something like a wedding season would look like, right? Like I imagined like showers and bachelorette parties and planning things with my girlfriends. And even last weekend, I was supposed to be in Michigan trying on dresses with my sister and my family. And so there is this continual shifting and adapting to what is versus what I had hoped would be. And I think that's just life in general, right? Like we're always like kind of having to shift and manage things that we expected to happen versus what's actually happening. But I think to someone who's going through that, I think the big piece is allowing yourself to be really effing sad. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, allowed to be really, really sad, because we need to experience both, right? And Caleb has been so grounding where he's like, it's all going to work out. You're going to get to do those things eventually. And it will be the perfect wedding when it happens. And I think he's right in that. But for me, I don't want to bypass the sadness and the grief that like, this really fucking sucks.
And I think to that point, if we're aware enough, we can accept the present moment as it is, and not use it like, because I think our natural inclination is to be like, it's going to work out. It's okay. Just don't be sad. It's going to work out. But no, I have to accept this present moment. I can't resist this, right? There's no resisting this. There's no fighting against this. This is what it is. So there's an acceptance, but the acceptance the way that the acceptance is supposed to work is it creates space to grieve, to be sad, to experience, and to naturally work through your loss. And I think one of the greatest disservices that we can do ourselves and people is to compare our loss to others.
Yeah.
Right. And the moment that we compare our loss to others, it's just our ego's fancy way and sophisticated way of getting us trying to spiritually bypass, or just to bypass our pain and the grief that we are experiencing individually. And so whether your loss is small, and it's just been the loss of plans, or the loss of, hanging out with friends, whatever it might be, or your loss is unfathomable, all loss in and of itself it needs to be grieved. It's in the grieving that we open up our heart to what will be.
Outside of the connection, because I know that's a big part of what you both do individually and together, what do you think people are probably grieving the most right now? That connection, I'll say, has definitely been a strong common denominator for a lot of the speakers and a lot of people I'm talking to. I think we're being reminded of just how important that is for us as human beings. We're kind of recognizing, hey, when I don't have even just environmental connection or actual physical touch with people that matter most to me, it makes me feel some kind of way. Outside of that, like, maybe grief is a big word for that, but what do you kind of like detach from, or even fully grieving right now?
Well, yeah, I think what's interesting that you touched on is the physical touch piece is really important. The human body needs on daily 10 hugs a day to grow emotionally. Like it creates.
Who only gets 10 hugs a day? That seems like a low quota.
I think it's low, but think about it. If you're someone who lives alone, or maybe you don't have, or you're quarantining, so
right,
you're not necessarily getting the physical touch that you're used to getting. So
once you hug yourself,
this is a tangent.
Virtual hug.
Your body doesn't know. Like your body doesn't know the difference between your hands and someone else's hands. So it's actually a good tip for someone who is alone to like physically touch yourself. But I think but there is the reality that we're so used to human contact. And I think like a lot of us have moved into a season where we're like, maybe we don't need that. We're more engaged in like social media than ever. But I think we're realizing in this time how much we actually need it. And I think it's not too big of a word to say that it's grief. It's intense grief. It's like a lot of loss. And I think it's a lot of loss of like, what we said earlier, like expectations of things to happen, right? And so often we just have this narrative of where our life is going and what we're building and what we're creating and all these fun things that were going to happen. And now they're not in some way. And I think grieving that is really, really important.
Yeah. And to add to that, I often say, like, you're not stuck in life. You just need to grieve a life that is no longer going to be, right? We
Wow.
experience
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
resistance in life and we feel so stuck. But what we're really doing is we're still trying to hold on to the way that we expected life to unfold
Yeah.
in the way that we wanted life to unfold. Instead of learning what it looks like to be an active participant in the life, in the bigger narrative, in the life that is unfolding all around us. And that's when we become more integrated, more connected, and experience more of a flow in life. But in addition to what I think a lot of people are grieving, whether they're aware of this or not, is the illusions of control.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
I think that's causing and wreaking a lot of havoc in people's life when they're really being forced to face this idea and this truth that I am not in control. That what if my life isn't so much going to now be about trying to control and to force my destiny and to make something of myself, but what this season is really doing is, what if life is more about learning how to trust that there's something or someone that's holding this all together. That's
It's more about letting go, more about just letting go and seeing what could be.
And so I think right now, especially growing up in the Western culture, and especially in our world where hustle more, attain more, make more, be more, do more, which is all good in and of itself. But at some point, we're going to have to stop and ask, why is the more so important to begin with? Right? At what place did I become lack or scarcity? And did I need to now look outside of myself to give only what I can give myself? And I really think that we have to grieve, like Kara had mentioned earlier, the productivity. We have to grieve the willfulness and self-determination.
Well said.
To make
Yeah.
something of ourselves and learn what it looks like to rest in the present, in the here and now. And that's so incredibly uncomfortable, because to rest in the present and to be in the here and now, it forces us to confront that what we really believe about ourselves. And for so many of us, it's that we believe about ourselves is, I'm not enough. And that's why we're constantly looking for more in life. And so to live and to sit still in the present now forces us to do work that we have been masking and hiding behind our pursuit of the more, which looks so great in our culture and celebrated so well in our culture, but it's not actually moving our life forward. So really, productivity, I feel like in this season of life, the new moving forward is stillness. And that's such a necessary disposition and posture of your heart that needs to be worked on daily.
Yeah, I think too, just to piggyback on that, it's interesting that when we hit a pause button in life, I don't think any of us do that intentionally. Like, I don't think we should, but I don't think it's very often where we say, let's just push pause and reflect, because there's so many other life circumstances that are demanding our time, our attention. But what happens when we hit pause, or whenever we're forced to slow down, is literally our internal world comes to the surface. So you no longer can avoid all the things that you might have been avoiding. And I think if you're a human being that's willing during this time, you're going to see some really gross stuff in yourself that maybe you didn't know was there.
Uncomfortable,
not gross.
maybe gross, who knows? Like, everybody's journey is going to be different.
Yeah, and that's okay. I think giving ourselves, again, permission to be like, wow, that's there. Interesting. Like, I didn't know I was a perfectionist. I didn't know I had such control issues. And that's come up, with me for the wedding, for example, where I'm like, wow, I do have a little bit of control left in me, because I want to take charge of this situation and get it my way. And this time is kind of mirroring back to me like, oh, I don't get to do that. And it is my ego trying to like keep me safe and get my way, or whatever it might be. But I think it's actually so freaking cool that we have this forced time to just allow this to happen.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Kara, I want to pick your brain a little bit on, well, I guess the both of you, but connection. I mean, that's a big part of what you both do. And what I came to learn of you, through Caleb, is these actual connect dinners where you go do what everybody always does. You go to a friend's house, you have dinner, but it has an intention behind it and it has a plan. And I think an intention and even just the mildest form of a strategy I think those two words, intention and strategy, are probably going to be the forefront of a lot of people's minds now, because we're given a lot of time and stillness to think about things and why we do it or why we want to do it. How are you staying creative right now? How are you connecting with people, and how would you recommend to people to just not let stillness dominate the entire day? I do think it's an important component, but like we were saying earlier, we need human connection. So how can we connect really through these times?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So I think of connection in a triad. I think of it always starts with connecting to yourself. It reaches out into connecting to other people, and then it branches into connecting to your purpose, right? So it's kind of this triad of connection, and it always starts with our internal world. So for me, I think part of this time has looked like really being intentional with doing practices that make me feel grounded and connected. So I think that's different for everyone. Meditation is a great tool. Yoga is a great tool. Food is a great tool. I've started to garden because I'm like, I want to feel connected to
Oh,
nature.
really?
Yeah, I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I got to build all of the garden boxes.
You build the boxes.
I let him build the boxes. I wanted to, and he was like, let me be the man, screwdriver. Literally screwdriver.
It's a win-win. Yeah, you get to, to get some physical activity. You get to, get your hands in the earth. Yeah, connection in a lot of ways.
It's a win-win. So so practices that keep us grounded and mindful of what makes us feel safe. So that's part one. Part two for me is I am an extrovert and I do need people time. Luckily, I am with a human, which is great for me. But also, I think just reaching out to people who are in my inner circle and being really intentional with the virtual time that I have with them. Intentional, you know this, but we always ask intentional questions that connect inners. So bringing those into conversations and just being overword professional with conversation, asking questions that are going to probe at things that are,
and not just making it a complaint fest.
Or, just allowing it to go to that like deeper level of like, what are you processing? Tell me about what's going on in your world right now.
Yeah.
Because all of us have massive things happening in our inner world, and especially for an extrovert, it's so important to verbalize those things. And then thirdly, the third part of connection for me is purpose, like connecting to the greater world. So asking questions of like, okay, if during this time I get to pause and I get to reflect, am I doing the work in the world that I want to be doing? Am I doing the things that make me come alive, and I am offering my service and contribution to the greater whole as a human race, and just really becoming aware of how I'm serving. I think that's a big question, is like, how can I show up in this time? And it's looked simple, like doing cooking videos here and there on Instagram because it's something I can offer, or doing like, we hosted like a virtual happy hour with strangers because we're like, we can do that for people. So that third part of connection is always about asking like, how can I show up and how can I serve the greater whole?
I think she touched on something really important. I've talked to a few people that they lost their jobs, their businesses have completely shut down.
Yeah.
But they've used this disruption in their life as a catalyst to dive deeper into their soul purpose or what they deeply want to do in life. Like so many of them, these few people that I'm referring to, they were making really good money. They were their own bosses. They were living a life that they wanted to do, but they were running companies, but they were empty, right? And it wasn't until this disruption out of their control completely halted their life and shut down everything. And I asked them, are you going to go back to this business? Are you going to research this business? And like, no, like I'm not, this is my way out. Like I'm done with this now. And so now I'm going to go and do the work. I'm going to find the courage of doing the work to discover what it is that I really want to do in this time period. And so I think there's just so much, not to undermine the grief or the sadness and the, like, it's not a linear path, right? Like grief is, it's messy, but don't be afraid to allow this disruption, to allow the universe, to God or whatever, to bring you closer to what you are designed to do, that will allow you to meet those unmet longings of adventure and mystery and living a meaningful life. You don't have to go back. Like even for me personally, there are a couple things that I do in my life where I'm like, Kara, I don't I told her this the other day, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I wouldn't have stopped because I was in a rhythm and I was going fast and I was making good money. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. It's not satisfying me when it's all said and done. And if life really is out of our control in so many ways, like, I don't want to waste my time here just getting by. I don't want to waste my time here sacrificing my heart's desires on comfort, right? Like, allow this time to disrupt your life in a good and meaningful way. And if you allow it to do that, it will point you in the direction that you are meant to go.
Yeah. And one
That's a
thing,
big realization, man. Yeah, that's pretty radical.
Yeah.
it's so good. One thing on top of that I want to add, going back to the connection piece, is that I think it's really important to be aware of the narratives you believe during this time. So when things do come up, when you're questioning, like, do I want to do this anymore? Whatever it is that is surfacing for you, especially if you are not feeling connected, I think it's really important to even like make a practice of it. Write down the narratives that you're believing. And for someone who's not, in a practice of doing that, what it can look like is, for me, let's say like the wedding didn't happen. The narrative that I could believe is things don't go my way. Like, things never go my way. And we look for evidence of the narratives that we believe, right? So we're constantly looking in the earth to prove this story that we believe inside of our head. And so I think,
of course this would happen. It's just my luck. Like this,
yeah.
I can't catch a break. Yeah. I can think of a few people. Yeah. Like that.
Or for people who are alone, like, oh, I'm never chosen, or I'll never be loved, or whatever these crazy narratives that we make up in our head are. I think it's really important to note them, and become mindful of like choosing to believe what's actually true. And again, there's so much work to do around that, but I think noting that a lot of times these environments that are scary and out of our control and unknown bring up really false narratives. Mm-hmm. And unless we are fighting them consciously and choosing to think differently and choosing practices that help our brain to choose differently, we can get stuck inside of that. And it's just going to end up making us feel less connected and less known and less whole.
Yeah.
And now's the time to rewrite that. We get to rewrite that. We get to really learn the stories, the narratives, the belief patterns, the belief systems, the identities that maybe have been true that we want to keep and maintain. Now's the time we get to take inventory of all this and reread them, rewrite them, or write some for the first time,
If you're longing for more in life, right? Because those narratives by nature are designed to keep you safe, right? Sure. They're designed to keep you safe. They are your ally in a lot of ways, because when we're living with stored trauma in our bodies, our central nervous system, reinforced by these narratives, are trying to keep us and protect us from the vulnerability of asking for more in life, which is going to inevitably cost you more. It's going to make you more exposed. It's going to make you more susceptible to hurt, failure, and disappointment. And so these narratives are really working for you in a lot of ways, because they're designed to keep you safe, but they're also designed to keep you small.
Yeah.
And if you want to take your life to the next level, and not in this like ascent, but life in the next level of meaning, more meaningful, more fulfilled, more vibrant, more magical, more expansive. If you want to live like that, you're going to have to challenge the narratives. And an easy way of doing it, Chase, is really, and to get into like make it practical, grab a small little notebook, put it in your back pocket, carry it around the house wherever you go, and start just becoming more aware of when you're activated or triggered in life. And then start paying attention to, because when you get aggravated, when you get triggered, when you're mad or something happens, usually those narratives are the first response. And
sure,
if you can
absolutely.
just to observe them and be like, it becomes like a game, right? Like, oh, right? Nothing does go my way. Okay. That's a narrative. Then write it down.
Yeah.
Write it down. And just, that's the first step, is becoming aware of those narratives. And then only when you're aware of it can you begin to shift it.
Yeah. Well said, man. And you said a word in there, game. And look, you know me, I don't sports, but you definitely did. And I'm going to try my best to make a sports analogy here. So bear with me. How important is it to stay on top of your game, even in the off season? And right now, I think we're probably in an off season for life, off season for business, for physical training, but we are going to get into I'm not going to say the same season. I don't think that sense of normalcy is really going to be there for a long time. We're going to create a new one. So we're in an off season of life right now. Like how can we show up, for spring training or for the game, best prepared outside of what we've been talking about here, man? Take us back to kind of like warrior mentality, that fucking just steamroll the line mentality for, when you do get back onto the field.
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a good question. I think honestly, the way that we stay on top of our game is we do the work to keep our heart open. Where so much disappointment will set in, so much bitterness and anger for things out of our control. These are all natural processes of grieving or letting go or confronting our the illusions of control that we've been holding on to. And all of this stuff, if not processed, will come in and add these like protective layers of crap over our hearts and close down our hearts for what is to come in our lives. And so I think a lot of times our natural inclination, and I think we saw this a lot as soon as this shutdown happened, right? We saw our whole world turn to Zoom, and we saw all the Facebook ads that you can imagine about like, this is a time for productivity. This is a time to do the things that you've been putting off. This is a time to, reestablish your life motto and to get clear on what you want to do. And that's all good and great, sure. But create some space to just do nothing. Like you're in the biggest life transition you probably have arguably maybe ever experienced in your life.
Or will again.
Or what's that?
Or will again, probably the biggest transformation time we ever will experience.
There's no necessity to place such a big demand on your life to do something with your time in the way of like product. So I think just staying on top of your game for me, Chase, is showing yourself massive self-compassion and giving yourself the permission to feel what you need to feel. Don't put unrealistic expectations on yourself to be somebody or to do something with your life. That's just not going to come to pass, because then you're just going to confront this narrative that says you don't have what it takes. See, you're a failure. You're a disappointment. I already told you this. Why did you not listen to me to begin with? And yeah, I think the self-compassion piece is so big right now, man. It's something that I'm practicing. And I think, Chase, that there is a collective shift in consciousness happening globally. The narratives rooted in ego and lack and scarcity and fear that have been so good at driving our lives forward are no longer going to work. It's like we have been craving authenticity. In a lot of ways, I think the language around authenticity and to be the person you were created to be, the language around fighting my truth and living an authentic life. Think about how there has been years of language where people have been speaking this into existence. And now suddenly it's almost like we spoke our lives, we spoke a prophecy.
Wow, yeah.
Now we're being stripped of all the illusions. Now we're being stripped and we're becoming naked and exposed and seen for who we really are. And the greatest disservice that we can really do to ourselves and to humanity at large is to go back to the way things were when we're living by fear, living by lack, living by scarcity. And so I think the game plan and to really prepare ourselves is to really, what does it look like to go into this next season of life more authentically me and living a life that's rooted in love and abundance and a greater understanding of knowing who I am and why I'm here. I don't want to go back to that old shallow way of living that's just driven by fear and the need to be more and to do more and to achieve more, because it's never going to be enough. I want to live every day of my life where I wake up not fighting for a significant life, but I wake up living from significance because I know who I am. That's a big shift.
Wow, Kara, any other words on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't play sports at all. I literally know.
Me either.
I know nothing. I don't even know how the game of football is played, truthfully. But what I think is interesting, when you said that, I immediately went to, in my mind, I was like, I wonder if it's an off season, or I wonder if there's a little bit of an injury that we need to heal. So with an athlete, I can imagine that if you tear a muscle, you don't pause and then try to like work out that muscle really hard and fix it. You let the muscle rest, you look at it, you like give it space to heal, you're tender with it. And I think culturally, I just wonder, I'm like, maybe we have an injury that just needs to be looked at, you know, that needs a rest ultimately. And maybe that injury is like our productivity or whatever it might be, our hustle mentality. And that's not bad, but maybe it's just a little bit injured and needs a little breather. So again, I'm not the sports analogy person, but I do imagine that there is time and space for like something to heal right now.
Yeah. Caleb takes me back to a lot of, you know, our training days. You know, right now, I think we're all experiencing the biggest tactical pause of our life. And it is a pause, and it can be a tactical pause if you choose it to be. You know, how am I kind of taking inventory? Okay, I'm having everybody rally on me. Let's take inventory of what we have. Let's get our sit rep. Let's, you know, I'll avoid all more military acronyms, but it's just, you know, now's the time, if you pay attention, to just see what you have going on in your life, see who is around you. And I'll kind of begin to wrap up here, but Caleb, you said something that kind of cued this concept of a test, really going through a test, and of maybe some of the people that we looked to before, our heroes, our mentors, the gurus, the coaches, you know, anybody, our neighbor, really. And I'm going to try to say this without sounding like an asshole, but just look at them and see who is still holding the line. See who, you know, maybe is not able to kind of live their own message, who is not able to just be there for you. When really look at where the rubber meets the road here. And I think maybe it's a reevaluation, Kara, like you said, maybe it's a time for them to kind of look at the injuries that they're dealing with that they weren't sharing with everybody. And maybe that's why it's keeping them from realistically showing up for people how they supposedly have been doing all along. Yeah, just pay attention, look around, you know, see who is still holding the line and how you can do that for other people. Absolutely.
Yeah. I really do think, Chase, that, and this is me, you know, so take it for what it's worth, that as, like I said, us moving into, as there is a collective shift in consciousness happening globally, that the next season of life, that counterfeit is going to be detected.
Amen, brother. Amen.
And for you to really find your place and that sense of belonging that we all desire at the deepest core of our beings, it's going to require you to actually do the work and not just read a book and not just watch a YouTube video and those are all good and important, but we have filled our Instagram feeds with memes and cliches and platitudes that give us that hit of dopamine that make us feel good about ourselves. But in the reality, it's not the substitute for the actual the downward descent into the turbulent waters of our own soul, where we're going to have to learn how to sit in the darkness for as long as it takes so that we can see the light for ourselves.
Damn. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. It's been great having the dynamic duo on here. And really looking forward to hanging out again, have another Connect dinner. And I hope you guys can get back on track with the wedding planning and stuff soon.
Thanks, Chase.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you guys, any final words?
No, thanks for doing this,
we
man.
love you. I think it's amazing.
Really cool.
Likewise.
To put that effort. So really, thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to honor you for that.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. And getting through all these interviews has been incredible. This is why I kind of always feel like a little bit selfish, you know, when your world is this and podcasting and content creation, all that stuff is you just learn so much the whole time. And that's why I started this journey, 3-4 years ago. And now we get to really, I think, bring really interesting walks of life, really interesting expertise and perspective and, businesses to the forefront for a lot of people, just to maybe finally, if they're in that headspace of, I am taking inventory of my life, I am curious about different things and what could be when I get on the other side of this. You guys are definitely contributing to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Chase.
Thank you.